set the scene here. So we're thinking about community and school partnerships for long-term monitoring that might help address a real problem. And to start a discussion, can you provide an example from our participants so far on how monitoring has been used to address a problem with youth involvement?
Yes, so we have a team come to our GLOBE training. GLOBE stands for Global Learning Observations to Benefit the Environment. And so, and this has measurement protocols that come with engaging students and youth in looking at, examining, observing the environment. And so this team, two teachers, Caucasian teacher from outside of Alaska and an Alaska Native teacher, and she's a young elder, I guess we would consider her, and have come as a team to our Arctic and Earth Science training. And they came with a issue that is happening in their village, which is river erosion, because some of the houses have started falling into the river. And so they designed a study where they could study the rate of erosion and the amount of moisture in the soil, the temperature. The students really got excited, and they even went to the village council to talk about this erosion problem, and even suggested that perhaps they could have a no-wake zone, and also to suggest a way of anchoring boats and so prevent the further erosion.
Yeah. So that's an example of how a team of teachers and community members and students work together to address a really pressing issue for their community. So we have a little hint from that story that monitoring matters. It can make a difference. That's in a short-term example. Melinda, I'm going to go to you first. Why do you think that environmental monitoring matters for Alaskan communities?
Well, when you ask me that question, I really am thinking about some of the elders that I've been involved with throughout my life and things that they have shared with me in relation to our lifestyle here in Alaska, particularly. I've had a number of elders, such as like Trimble Gilbert, as well as Howard Luke, and also my aunt. My aunt, I remember visiting her one time, and we were talking about several things, and one of the things I remember telling me was the importance of looking outside when you get up in the morning, getting up and going to the window or going outside and seeing what the weather is like. And that was one of the first things that people did, really, to see what the day was like, and how do you prepare for the day, and how do you decide what you're going to do throughout the day. But really it was about observing. It was observing your environment, monitoring the day, if you want to look at using that particular language. But it didn't just stop there, because in Alaska, with our Alaska Native people, and people from my home village, and I'm from Anvik, I didn't say that in my introductions, it was so important in terms of lifestyle, and when it came to deciding when to hunt or when to go out on the land if you were going berry picking, or when to travel together. And so that observation, I think, is very much ingrained in us, and yet our education, our traditional education, and our experience in the last couple generations has changed. And so I think looking at monitoring now and what that may mean, particularly in this project, and what that may mean for some of the decisions we have at community levels is significant.
We taught a workshop together this past year, Melinda, and one of the questions that came up was, why do we got to make these measurements if I can go outside and tell you that there's a lot more snow today than there was yesterday? And what is the value of the data and making measurements, do you think?
We're looking at this in this realm of school and community, and you guys are talking about science, but in Alaska, with our communities living so reliantly on hunting and fishing and gathering, our subsistence lifestyle, it's related to our life way. It's not just seen as a lens of science.
Right.
That's the academic lens.
Yes.
You know. But in collecting and understanding the data, then, as I mentioned previously, it allows people to really have a sense of agency, a sense of being able to understand the process, and then to take that process, and maybe they want to show up at a game management meeting and say, this is the information that I have that is collected in my community, and this is the action that I'm suggesting to this board. That might be one way to address that, or in planning, right? So because we have one of the longest coastlines in the U.S., that, or is it the longest?
Yeah.
It's gotta be.
So because we have the longest coastline, you can cut that. Then also, how might communities work together to address an issue, right? Such as coastal erosion. And so it may be that students from a collection of schools that could compare data and say, gee, what is going on in your community, and then what is going on in the communities close by or even further down the coastline, and having an understanding. And maybe they want to take collective action for their community together.
And in one of the earlier discussions in this video series, we talked a little bit about the use of this sort of data, monitoring data, for helping make decisions for the future through things like planning and projecting using models to help us plan for what we think might happen in the future based on the data we have today. So you talked a little bit about why you mentioned youth being engaged in the monitoring process. I'm going to turn to Elena. Since 1996, you've been monitoring the environment with youth
Using the GLOBE program.
including myself as a little girl in Fairbanks. What do you think are the values of engaging in monitoring with youth for us?
I think, first and foremost, I think it's an exciting way of engaging the students in learning science by actually doing something, not just reading a book or saying, oh, somebody else did this, then so we're going to do that. But they're actually collecting data, their own data, which they also share with others. So then it's archived in the GLOBE website, and that data archive is available to anybody, other students, scientists, community members. And in fact, an example of one way like precipitation data is used is after a hurricane, the National Weather Service is interested in how much precipitation has been dumped by the hurricane. And they don't have enough stations, but there's more GLOBE schools that monitor precipitation as one of the things they monitor. And they've used that for future emergency plans and actions that they can do. And the other thing that I can connect with what Melinda said about elders saying how important it is to connect to what's happening in the environment from the start of the day. And one of the things that some elders have told me is that they appreciate the GLOBE program, which is one of the monitoring programs, as a way of connecting their youth to the environment, so that they're also aware of what's happening, not just the elders, the parents and the uncles and the grandparents.
Well, I just want to add to that. When you look at taking kids out of the classroom and extending the learning beyond that to their whole world, a world especially that they may be intimately connected to, or maybe that they can see in a different way. I think that's really critical. and it's active learning.
Yeah.
It's hands-on learning, and because it's happening in the community and it relates to their community, it has meaning. And so I think that is significant, especially, we're in situations where if it's collaborative learning with a student as well as a community member that's involved, and then a teacher. And in Alaska, we have particularly high turnover, and I know we may discuss this more. It is also an opportunity for a young person maybe to share what they know with a new teacher that's coming in, or vice versa, what a community member can share. And so the learning is not just about science, it could also incorporate the knowledge system that comes from this land and from our people here in this land.
Right.
So another value of the long-term program is that you can empower the students to become teachers of their teachers, and while also allowing them to use multiple learning styles, experiential learning, outdoor hands-on learning, but also the communication across generations, cultures, and educating their new teacher.
Yes, and beyond the learning styles, also multiple knowledge systems.
Yeah.
Both the indigenous and the Western science.
Yeah. From a like formal school perspective, we know that the teachers have to hit certain standards and certain process skills. From your experiences, what have been some of the benefits of engaging students in this in long-term monitoring?
So, especially now with the next generation science standards, the monitoring and the project-based studies that you have mentioned and place-based, it's actually meeting the standards that they need to meet anyway. And so this is another way of not having to do extra work, but actually to meet the standards that they need to use in the classroom. So that's another advantage. And then the other one is to where the students are actually, so the GLOBE program is one of NASA's Earth observing programs, which means they're doing the work on the ground, on the Earth, and validating and helping validate what's being observed from by the satellites, above the Earth. And so, which is a very important way of studying the Earth from both, eyes on Earth and from above, from below. So from local to a global and regional, perspective.
So a teacher would have the chance to use these the monitoring process to conduct small scale investigations, maybe within a single school year, but also connect it to this larger global ongoing investigation, ongoing effort to understand the way that our world is changing, and bringing together teams across school and community is one solution you already embedded in there,
right.
And really making sure that everybody values the project and recognizes the need for that information,
right.
for building a sustainable and prosperous future for all of us.
Right. And it's a means of empowerment for youth.
Yeah.
To be able to help do something for their community.
Yeah. I felt empowered by it. And I certainly did. Yeah. So I guess to sum up our conversation, we just encourage all the Arctic and Earth Science participants and beyond to think about what issues are there in your community that could benefit from long-term monitoring, and what types of information is needed to help address those issues. And then finally, for the empowerment and the future generations, what do youth have to contribute to that need? And how can we help build a data literate, empowered next generation of observers for Alaska?
And another way to say that, and it's a challenge that has come from our elders, is how do you encourage younger people, and it could be us adults as well, to pay attention and then to act.